Appreciate it. We'll start the meeting in about a minute, and like I said, if anybody wants to register to comment, please do it now. What's your name?
What was that?
Derek, are you?
I don't have to do all my email, but it's so long. Thank you.
Derek, do you need a spot by Joelle, and you're welcome to join us? Drag a chair up.
She left? Y'all are awful quiet in here. Probably in the bathroom.
It is 6 o'clock. I will now call this regular city council meeting on Tuesday, June 23rd to order. If you will rise, I will read an invocation followed by the pledge. Heavenly Father, thank you for this day that you have given us. Thank you for the many blessings you give this city and give us all. Thank you for the much needed moisture last night. We ask that if it be your will that we could have some more. Be with our firemen and police and first responders and military, Lord, and guide them and keep them safe. Be with us tonight as we move through tonight's agenda. Give us wisdom and foresight. Help us to make good decisions for this city, Lord. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for joining us tonight. At this time, we will have public comment on all agenda items. Janine, is there anybody registered?
Yes, sir. We have two, Margie Campbell and Darla Jennings.
Margie, you were on the list first. If you'll approach the podium, give your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
My name's Marge Campbell. I live at 1310 East Delano in Littlefield. And I just wanted to say that some of the things that I get on my Facebook Littlefield news page just really disappoints me with the adults in this city. They are rude, they're obnoxious, they don't even try to come to meetings to learn what is going on in this city. All they want to do is put people down, and I'm tired of it. If you don't like the page, go to a different one. That goes for everybody.
Thank you, ma'am. You said Darla Jennings was next?
Yes, sir.
Darla, if you'll approach the podium, give your name and address for the record, please. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Darla Jennings, 1302 West 13th, Littlefield, Texas. I'm talking about the pool. I want to know how much is the admission fee going to be when our kids go? how many employees are we gonna have, and are they gonna be certified? Where is the water source for the pool gonna come from? If they're gonna have a concession stand, who's gonna be serving the food? Who's gonna be making a profit from this money? Are y'all gonna charge when we bring our food in? Who owned that land before we bought it? And is this gonna bring our community, oh, wait. So if we build this, pool here, it's gonna make everything look nice. I live in that area, so, you know, I enjoy my taxes going up. But who profits from that? I mean, I was looking at like buying a plot on the housing committee, but I called and I know who answered that phone. Who makes a profit from selling that land? I don't know what else I got to say, but I think you are my councilman. And I always call you or you to ask the question to. So, but I want to know, can the people in this town afford it? If you look around the town, we got houses that are being, like, they're torn down, they're horrible. And can we not do something to build everything back up? Anyway, peace.
Thank you, Ms. Jennings. We cannot respond to your questions during this time, but we'll try to fit as many of them in an agenda item as we can.
You do that.
This time, we will have an introduction of new city employees. Mitch?
I believe Ross got a couple of semi-new employees.
Yes, sir. This gentleman is Bo Sanders. He went to high school, Sterling City. He comes to us from Big Lake. He's got experience, and we're tickled pink to have him. He's been here for a year. He's always been busy when we've tried to introduce him before, or he's found a good hiding spot. This gentleman, y'all may know him. He's Shane Martinez. He grew up here, graduated from high school here. He's been an officer in Denver City and Yoakum County. He knows a lot of you folks. District Attorney Say knows him on the good side. So we're tickled pink to have these guys, and their assets to our police department and the community. Thank you, sir.
It's great to have y'all guys, and thank you for all that you do. Mitch, are there any more? Well, thank y'all, and I don't know if the chief can maybe stick around. Thank y'all for coming tonight.
Yes, sir. Yeah, there'll be some.
Next, we will consider and approve the minutes from the May 26th, June 2nd, and June 15th meetings. There are no additions or corrections. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes as read?
I make a motion that we approve.
Was that made by Ben, seconded by Buddy? Made by Buddy, seconded by Ben. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? The motion carries. Next, we will consider and approve monthly departmental reports, police department, fire department, EMS, code enforcement, animal control, landfill, water, wastewater, streets and parks, municipal court, monthly financial reports, sales tax collection, property tax collection reports, LEDCA, and B if the board's met. If you have a question, please identify the page.
On page 37, that monthly report, the month is stated wrong at the top. Should be May, but it's supposed to be automatically filling that spot, so it didn't work, so it should be May.
I'd like to mention our sales tax collections on page 39. Our collections for May were $122,300, in June $115,800 for the month. That, if you'll notice back looking over the last 9 years, those are setting records, and so thank you for everybody for shopping local. especially during the last several months. Our sales tax reflects that, and it helps our businesses in town. If there are no other questions, can we get a motion to approve the monthly departmental reports?
I make a motion. Second.
Which has been made by Michael, seconded by Kenny, that we approve the monthly departmental reports. Is there any further discussion? If none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, the motion carries. Next, we will discuss and consider an adoption of the resolution of the City Council of the City of Littlefield, Texas, directing publication of a notice of intent to issue combination tax and revenue certificates of obligation and resolving other matters relating to the subject. Mitch, should you give us an intro?
Yes, this is a requirement if the city decides to issue a bond. This is a requirement the state has, that one of the notices that we have to notify the public of the intent to issue a bond. And I had a couple of questions before the meeting today, and I passed them on to our financial advisor, and here's the answer. The question was, why is the notice a higher amount than what we discussed as far as the amount of money needed to build the project? And the answer is, this is a not to exceed number. In other words, the bond council wants us to keep all of our options open in case, there's something else that may come up during that time, and we could possibly want to add something to the bond, like a piece of equipment or something like that. That was our financial advisor's answer to that particular question of why it's staked higher than what we've discussed. Also, another question I had is, why don't we just put the amount that we talked about in the notice? And the answer is kind of a complicated issue. When you sell these bonds as a premium or a discount, you could sell and you could possibly have a big savings in the issuance of the bond if you sell at a premium or a discount on the bond. So you could possibly, in the transaction, sell a higher bond and then fund it to make it more attractive to an investor. So that was the answer to whether or not you should put the exact amount or what in the notice. So hopefully I've answered those two questions that came before the meeting. I don't know if you have any more questions besides those two.
The rate, it has a higher rate than we discussed last week, and so he has an answer there too. Could you go over that?
Yeah, that rate is a not to exceed number, and it's actually an estimate that's across the board for bonds over the last several years. So, like I say, this notice is a requirement that the state requires that we publish in order to go forward with the bonding process.
So this is the beginning steps of you said going forward to get the bond. So at this point, if we approve this tonight, then the next steps are that schedule that they gave us last week. Let's see here. Publish the first notice of intent, and then we get to complete the swimming pool design and begin preparation. Second publication of the NOI, et cetera, all the way down that list. So there is no opportunity, as far as I can see, in this situation to have the election for the bond by the people. And is there any way in there to put that in this process or not?
Not under the current proposed issuance. This is for a general, this is a revenue, this is for an issue of combination tax and revenue certificates of obligation.
Right. Well, I guess before we even consider this, I'd like to just voice my, again, voice what I have to say and what my constituents have to say about this. So I prepared just a little list. It's nothing fancy, but the pros and cons of the pool, and it includes everything that everybody knows about. But because I feel that without an election, it's a bigger ordeal than what most of us up here on council will ever encounter again, probably, unless we have a water bond for the main water line. But this is just the pros and cons. Obviously, it's a great opportunity for the kids' programs and fun for all during the summer months of the year. It might encourage visitors from out of town to spend the day and their money in Littlefield. And it's considered an attraction for those who may think about moving here. Now, before I go to the cons, are there any other possible pros that we have about the pool being here? And I know that nobody from the audience can speak, but I'm sure the people have spoken to you all about what the pool would do for, or the aquatic center, let's say, would do for Littlefield. Is there anything they felt could bring to my attention?
Give me a second to look over your list.
Okay.
I think it shows that people are trying to invest back into the city by giving them quality of life, things to do. We have none of those right now.
We do expect that it will bring people from the area, as you mentioned here on number 2, from Amherst, Whit Harold, Sudan, wherever, passing through. It is a very visible location that hopefully they will see from 84 and that will attract people to the town, or at least to drive through and see what all we have to offer. One thing is also whether, one comment I had from an elderly gentleman years ago was, when we first started this several years ago, was he was older and his kids didn't live here and his grandkids never came and visited. My response to him was that one day, he'll want to move to the retirement home or closer to his kids, and that he'll be looking for somebody to buy his house, which is a very nice house on, I can't remember the street, 20-something. And I told him, I said, with who's going to buy your house, an elderly person or a young family? He said, well, probably a young family. And, that's what, if we want to attract young families, it's going to take a few of these amenities. We do a lot of economic development and had some really great successes over the past several years with the addition of Continental Dairy, the prison back in full operation, several other retail businesses that have came and some have gone. But a lot of those upper management people that have moved in from other areas for both the prison and the Eagle Plant Detention Center and the milk plant live in Levelland, Lubbock, and Shallow-Water and other places, and asking some of them, Mitch and I have been in meetings with some of the prison people and asking, how come they don't call Littlefield home? And they've often moved from very nice places of the United States. And the major number one problem is lack of houses available, of move-in ready, remodeled, back the U-Haul up, dump your stuff. And the second is, part of it's attractions. We've got great schools, but our parks are nice, they need work. But if we're going to promote and attract people to live here for these jobs that we're headhunting, it takes a lot of dynamics, school system, hospitals, community, and Littlefield's been trying to do the best it could for the past several years. We've torn down over 50 dilapidated structures and more to go. And, we're doing a lot to try to clean up the decades of problems, but it takes all of these things in conjunction. So yes, I think it increases the property values for all of us. If your valuation goes up at the appraisal district, which it does anyway, I guess your taxes are going to go up. We're not asking to do a tax increase for this project. That's never been asked for. Or anticipate our tax rate will stay the same, and I can go into how we fund this later. So that's a few of my ideas, Mr. Warren.
All right, thank you. All right.
There's here this past weekend, I went to that big softball tournament in Lubbock. I had a niece playing, and they had teams from all over the state playing softball. I mean, Hobbs, you name it. I mean, they had them from all over the state. It's one of the biggest tournaments in the state, I think, as far as for the age group that they have. And I think Littlefield at one time, they started doing that before this COVID hit. You know, I used to umpire some of them tournaments, and last year we had a Midnight Madness tournament. It was from 7 o'clock in the evening to 7 o'clock in the morning, and it brought so many teams. And there were so many teams that couldn't stay here because there was nothing to do afterwards. You know, there's nothing. You know, there's nothing to do. I think the only hotel they had a pool was the Best Western, and he couldn't accommodate all the teams. So, in saying that, I'm not saying that we can get as big as that tournament in Lubbock, but the softball tournament and the Little League are sure trying. I mean, we've had state tournaments here in Little League, you know, and the people that travel from out of town, they go stay in Levelland, they go stay in Lubbock, you know, because we don't have anything extra for the kids to do afterwards. And I think that's one of the positives. If you really look at what our Little League and our softball league is doing, and it's really great. And it's something that could even get bigger. And I think, I know the pool will be part of that. Because some of those teams, they play in the morning and they don't play till the next day, so they need something to do. And that'll be part of bringing in other people from other towns to do that. And I think the pool will be a big asset to the community, not only to the community, but to people that visit here.
I also think that, you know, by doing this, it can also attract private investors who might want to come in and to invest in our city. I mean, we've got to be proactive in what we do if we want to see the city grow and get past the stigma of being just a podunk town and just resting on our laurels. I mean, we're going to have to be able to see the forest beyond the tree. And you know, if people who are looking to invest into a city or something that want to come in to do something, just like what Councilman Rangel was saying, for just taking, for example, the softball team, you know, you got a swimming pool, well, why not, somebody might want to come in and invest in some other type of an activity or a business or something. I just see it as a sign of being proactive and a sign of growth and just a sign of moving forward and not just being stagnant. That's what I think.
Good points. Anything else?
I think it creates another event center. City of Burton, pretty much, their pool's rented out. Anytime that's not open to the public, it's always rented. So I think that would create another event center for our town.
Okay, so that was actually something that was brought up against there. These current plans, do we have, with the plans, is that, the building that they have, is that an open building? Is it an enclosed building where people could have parties inside it during?
You talking about the phase 2 possibility down the road, or the
Well,
pool
no,
house
I don't know
building?
exactly which part is which on that plan.
The Brown building is not part of this original construction. That would be an additional down the road future thing if we ever wanted to add a community center or something to it and tie it into that grounds. The red would be bathhouses and restaurants, concessions.
I have people ask me about that as being a part of an event center that might be used year-round, even though the pool may not be used year-round, the event center possibly could be. So, well, I have to bring up the cons just because they're there. The first part is the $4 million price tag, because everybody initially was under the impression it was going to be about $750,000, and that number has ballooned to quite a bit, and plus the interest over the period that we have to finance the bond is going to be $6.5 million plus. Next, right now, one of the concerns was this unstable environment that the whole world is in with COVID and everything going on. We have uncertain economic times and social conditions, and I believe getting a bond at this time, even though the rate's low, is just probably not the best time to do it. I mean, yeah, rates are great. I mean, you can't beat well, I don't know what the rate is actually now. Whatever the rate is. Because we've got unemployment. Littlefield's, right now, unemployment's zero. We've got, Nopalito's totally shut down except for Shady's and the store there. Right now, we have social distancing and social gathering limitations. There's, you talked about 600 people being able to go into this pool. We don't know if those limitations are going to be removed. And it's possible that we could be limited to only 100 people at the pool. Who knows what that's going to be in the future? And who knows if these limitations are going to be lifted? They may make us start wearing masks everywhere all the time. Who knows how that's going to be? I know in Dallas County, everybody has to wear a mask when you're out in public. In Texas, Dallas County is requiring that. So it's just the health and safety concerns that's on everyone's mind right now. So that's part of that. Next, the other thing is, it's on everybody's mind too, is it doesn't benefit all the taxpayers of Littlefield. I mean, there are people that will not have, they don't have grandkids here, they won't have grandkids here. It won't benefit all the taxpayers of Littlefield. Not everybody in Littlefield will be using the pool. And then the other thing is that pools are typically available only during the summer months. I've had somebody ask me if this could be redesigned to be used for year-round use. I don't know if that's possible. That would be something that would really increase the usability and a reason for getting a bond. Of course, that would cost money because you're going to have to redesign a covering of some sort to be able to use it during year-round.
What about the school year, though? School year takes up the other 9 months. Kids will be in school, so that's full.
That's true, but there's things on the weekends that kids could use during the weekend or the evenings. If it's covered, they could use it from 5 to 9. Lights,
Yeah.
Of course, the annual maintenance and expenses would typically exceed income. And we talked about that. Most pools or city pools are not a moneymaker. That's just the common fact of the matter. And there are other less costly options available. Obviously, different pool designs. Basic pools is really what we want. Kids don't care about all the extra stuff. I mean, they do. It's nice to have. But really, when it comes down to it, they just want something to do in Littlefield. So the options are, that I brought up before, the Crescent Park Hotel pool. Everybody's poo-pooed that idea since I brought it up, and we've tried to work on it over the time. But part of it was that the previous owners had they had a difficult time trying to negotiate the pool sale. So Johnny Vodka is the new owner of that Crescent Park Motel. And he today told me that he would give us a 10-year lease and at $0 per year lease amount, which means that the reason why the city didn't do anything to keep that pool running and why it deteriorated so much was we didn't own the pool and we didn't have a long enough lease to make it worthwhile to put money into that pool. I think it was 1 or 2 years. I don't know if anybody was on the council and remembers. Michael, do you remember it was a 1 or 2 year lease? It was very short.
Well, but we leased it, if I'm not mistaken, from the time it closed, from the day they leased it to the time it closed. I think we leased, the first lease was like in 1974 to the time it closed.
Okay, but I'm asking, we had to renew that lease. Was it a 1 year or a 2 year lease?
No, I think it was more than that. I think it was about a 5-year lease.
Well, see, and even that, putting money into a 5-year lease doesn't really give us the
Yeah.
justification to put a huge amount of money into something that's not ours. So that was an option that came up here recently. And then, of course, the city would have more incentive to improve that property with a 10-year lease, or if we had an auto-renewing 10-year, 20-year, whatever it is, if we had that money, we could invest in that. It wouldn't be ours, but we could kind of claim ownership in it. So,
I don't know. I mean, I appreciate your list of pros and cons here, Ben, but yeah, you said $4 million plus an interest of 6.5, we don't know what the interest rate's going to be right now, and that's being extremely, I say, on the high side right there.
Okay,
Hang on. You got to talk, I'm talking. So right now, we are at a time where we can look, and I just don't think that we're at a better position to finance this project than what we are right now, period. The bottom line is, we've been talking about this for 3.5 years. We've been talking about the Crescent Park pool, and let me tell you something. It just comes a point in time where, you're just going to have to cut your losses on that Crescent Park pool. I mean, if you got an old beat-up car, are you gonna keep putting money in after that thing to keep it running, or are you gonna just go ahead and bite the bullet and buy something new that's gonna be updated, that's gonna have a warranty with it, and it's gonna be a little bit more reliable? And the numbers that you were presenting about the pool, you know, were 3.5, 4 years ago. And, you know, have you taken into consideration what the city would have to do as far as bringing that back up to code, as far as the ADA goes and the bathrooms, as far as the plumbing system? We've already discussed how much water it leaks out of it right now. I mean, and personally, I don't think it would be in the city's best interest, and we're talking about the city's money, to be putting money into a facility that we're not going to have any ownership in. And most importantly, we won't have the possibility of expanding to put a community center in, or a lap pool, or, you know, continued growth. We have the land, and we have the possibility for growth. We're going to be landlocked over here, and I just don't, I don't really personally, I don't see that as an option, but that's just me. As far as the social distancing and the COVID stuff, bottom line is, I really think it's just here. It's something that we're going to have to learn to live with. I mean, from now until somebody comes up with the vaccine or whatever, we're just going to have to learn to deal with it. And if you want to, you know, live in fear, that's your choice. I choose to live by faith. Okay. And yeah, does it not? I don't really agree about benefiting all taxpayers. You know what? I'm all for it. Will I be down there every day during the summer using it? Probably not. But you know what? It's these kids around here that's going to be the ones that are going to enjoy it. And that's what we need to be looking at and investing into their future. And you know, with that in mind, you know, it's all about vision. It's all about growth. It's all about where we want to be. You know, yeah, there's some things here that you've talked about, you know, but I think some of it's fear-induced and the uncertainty of taking that step. And I personally feel like right now we're not going to have a better time to do this. And if we wait 3 or 4 more years, all this is going to do is go up in price. The interest rates will probably be higher. And then we're going to be back here talking about the same thing like we did today and like we were doing 3 years ago. We had a committee that came in here and did a fantastic job as far as addressing all the needs and what people had expressed desires for. Something new, something to take ownership of, something to be proud of, you know? And is it going to cost something? Yeah, it's going to cost something. But going forward, it is going to cost something. Okay? I'm willing to, and the people, my constituents have talked to me, and they're for it. They want to see the growth. They want to see, they understand the vision and the possibilities that this facility can bring to this community. So, I mean, I'm for it.
That was one thing that I forgot to put on this, is that we have a facility out there, the detention center is full right now, and it's actually bringing in money. It's supposed to be paid off next February. And one of the options was to actually, and I know bringing it up is probably not the best idea, but what happens if we just take that money that we make after it's paid off, get enough to pay cash for this rather than have a bond?
How many years does it take to do that, though?
I was going to address that in a minute to recap last week, the financing end of it. To go over your list of cons, though, Mr. Warren, is the $750,000 that came up last week in our meeting and this week in the meeting. I'll explain that again. The $750,000, that was 3 years ago. A group of private citizens came to me. There was a lot of interest to have a pool at that time, and said, let's find a way to build a pool. Those individuals, and myself included, they hired their own architect, designed some preliminary drawings, went and looked at other facilities, talked to some pool contractors, got estimates on building a pool. Well, that number did not include everything at the time, but it was, you know, it was a rough number. That was a number of me or you or a private citizen going out and building a nice sized pool. At that time, it didn't have lazy rivers and these big water slides. Another thing that it didn't do, it's possibly some oversight or just not being educated enough on the issue at the time, and I'll take full responsibility for that. Anytime the city government or any government is involved in something, it takes a massive amount of engineering. They often make everything thicker, better, more safe, and it balloons the cost of the projects that it would cost you as a private citizen. It drastically increases that. On to number two, it is unstable. This is 2020 and it's weird, and you know everyone from now might be weird, but you still got to live. Does not benefit all the taxpayers. I tend to disagree with that. Maybe not necessarily of them themselves going and getting themselves wet in this, but all ships rise in a rising tide, and if there's good things going on in the community and it's growing, all taxpayers benefit in this community. It's only available for use during the summer months of the year. That is one of the downfalls of the pool. If you'll notice that drawing up there just to what would be the left side of that page, to the left of that parking lot, to the left of the pool, outside of that green fence or the white fence and the green boundaries. There was an original design a couple years ago that had the pool and the bathhouses were phase 1, community center was phase 2. Phase 3 was in another building, we did not include it in this, but it had a closed pool that possibly had roll-up glass doors on it that could be open year-round, and the same manager that ran the pool, the community center, would also be a full-time yearly staff that would take care of all the facilities. But that would be a key card entrance, like the gym would be, pay a monthly fee, get a lanyard, go in, swim laps, exercise, do physical therapy. The physical therapist and hospital could find a use to help with that. The school might want to get a swim team, but the reason we didn't include that is it's just so far in the future. And there's so many discussions with the school and the hospital and who else could take ownership in that with us to see that that comes through. So yes, you're right, there'd be 9 months it wouldn't be used. Annual maintenance, it will be a net loss for the city. City manager Mitch Grant has ran several pools throughout his 30 years plus career. They all lose money, don't they, Mitch? 20, 30,000?
Not break even at best.
Break even at
That's
best.
if you count everything, like you'll see your sales tax go up because people are coming to town to swim, they buy a hammer, they fill up the gas. There's a lot of intangibles that you could figure in there, but still, yeah, they just don't break even.
And lastly is the cost of, or other options, other smaller pools, things like that. Parks Committee, a committee appointed by the City Council, came up with this idea after many public hearings and years of work. And that's what the next agenda item, we'll discuss that more. The Crescent Park Hotel Pool, that is a new owner. We had a different city manager and a different public works director when that was looked at really seriously several years ago. A lot of things have changed. The new owner is probably easier to work with than the old owner. I was there for one pool contractor and with our old public works director, Michael Williamson, that was there. Talked about a lot of the problems. That expansion joint leaks 10,000 gallons a day. They're worried about a cavity under there that could cave in. The pool contractor said this is a total demolition, start over. It was going to be, to do it right, it was excess of $1 million at that time, 3 years ago. We don't own the land, never will own the land as part of the hotel. And that didn't include bathhouses in that estimate that they did. So on with, just quickly, I'm going to rehash the financing portion of this because we have a better attended meeting this week than we did last week. And so there's some questions that lots of people are asking, and so want to take an opportunity to explain that. Ms. Jennings left, and some of this will be addressed of her question. But the financing-wise, we brought up this discussion about a pool several years ago. At that time, it was brought up with a donation, an optional donation on your utility account, the Parks Fund. And at that time, the City Council dedicated the Parks Fund revenue to go towards a pool. Currently, that Parks Fund is bringing in about $43,000 a year from all of the $2 and $3 and $4 and $5 fees that people generously donate. It never gained enough traction of enough people donating to get to the size of money that it was going to take to either finance or build a pool. That doesn't mean that the interest in a pool has diminished since then. So since then, a lot of things have changed. The reason we don't have a pool up till this point is we have not been able to afford it. The prison was built in 2000, I believe, and it was a great deal. It was done by the same type of bonds that we're looking at today, a general obligation bond, where they did not go to the voted citizens. Lots of heartburn. Hindsight's 2020. Didn't work out for 9 years or so, and it was a mess, but we're better off today because of it. That during that time, the city was very strapped for cash, went from investment grade bonds to junk bonds, and so pretty messy financial history. In 2014, we refinanced those bonds and cut our interest rate in half, saved the city over $1.5 million in interest. In 2016, we had to refinance them when Correct Care took over, and it became taxable use on the bonds, how it's defined by the federal government, so we had to refinance them at that time. In 2015, I know these numbers well because this was the bleakest and worst time that I have ever served in any organization, especially the city of Littlefield. In September 2015, this is an audit on our website, the city of Littlefield had $10,085,000 in bond debt, $1.9 million in outstanding lease payments, for a total indebtedness in 2015, September 2015, of $11.9 million. Well, let's get to the better now. It sounds better this way. $11,985,000. That's a lot of money. 2015, 5 years ago, a little less than 5 years ago. March 20, because of the council support, the treasurer, Andrew Eisenwine, and myself brought up a plan when we got the prison full. Mitch even questioned it at that time. The council, Michael, you're one of the originals that I was on with at that time. Thank you for your support. Thanks to the foresight of the previous and this council for sticking with the plan, we decided to take all of that revenue that facility generated, stockpile it, and try to pay down the debt. And I'm happy to announce that in March 2021, our normal payments come in February. We have the money to pay off the prison today, but we're waiting until our audit's done. And our normal payments in February, so that's kind of when it's always been planned to be done. In March 2021, the city of Littlefield will owe $735,000 total.
Great job.
In 5 years, we've paid off $11.2 million of debt. Why are our streets falling apart? Why is the parks not green? Why is all of this falling down? Why do the public works cars have 100,000 miles on them? Because we committed 5 years ago to live on beans and rice, get the debt from 2 decades ago paid off, and we're there. So, current structure, how does this get paid for? You need to understand these numbers, the paper needs to understand them, the public needs to understand them. And this is part of the reason why I was for going to a vote of the citizens, because it's your pool, you decide. I'm against that because most people will not take the time to see the big picture, understand the budget, look at the long-term plan, and be educated to make this decision. That's what voted these people in here, to dedicate this time to be informed and make wise decisions. And hopefully, I've always served with people that have tried their best to do that. So how does it get paid for? Our current budget, $7.8 million for our water, sewer, and general fund. $7.8 million a year is our annual revenues and expenditures in those two main items of the city of Littlefield. The city of Littlefield itself, general fund, pays $650,000 average for the principal and interest payment for the prison itself. $250,000 comes from LADCB, which was decided years ago, prior to my time, to help service the debt of that facility. And that facility is generating today around $980,000 in revenue. If you add those numbers up, it's $1.88 million, $1,880,000. That sounds like that's a lot of money. What you need to understand is this money is about to come back into the budget of the city of Littlefield. We have a $7.8 million budget as it is right now. This money is money from heaven, and thank you for building the prison years ago. Mr. Warren, you were on the council at that time. Thank you for doing it. It was a rocky road, We have 300, or not 300, we have 200 jobs, 200 jobs in town today. And it's producing revenue and adding jobs and stuff for the city. That $1.8 million is about to come back into our budget because of no longer having to make payments and of the revenue of that facility. And so it's now an issue, and this is what we planned for 5 years ago. This isn't an issue of the streets need repaired. There's $1.8 million. We spend $100,000 plus a year that we scraped by several years ago and said we are going to do at least $100,000 of seal coating a year. Need to do a lot more. $1.8 million does a lot of seal coating. What we're asking for, the financing package for this pool, is not a 30-year bond like the prison was passed on, because 30 years you pay a lot of interest in the first 15 years. We're asking to do a 15-year bond. The rate, the financial advisor said last week, it's fluctuating, it's very volatile right now, but around 2.5% interest, the lowest we've ever had. Our best bond is, I believe, 3.6. Andrew, is that correct? 3.4%?
Well, the TCCC is around 3.65, I believe, and then the Highway 84 was a variable that went from like 3.4 and then goes up to 3.8 over the course of it.
So the best rate that we have on any bonds, and 15 years with amortization around $4 million, and we'll explain that in a minute too, of the cost. Around $4 million is an annual payment of $375,000. That's a lot of money. Well, keep in mind we've got a budget of $7.8 million today. It's a lot of money. That $375,000 for the principal payment for this facility over the next 15 years, we're wanting, the approach being proposed is to use $250,000 of LEDC-B money, which can be used for public or quality of life projects, leaving the city's general fund to fund approximately $125,000 of this. Now, it is a net loss. It will be a tax on, the tax is a bad word because it will get related to a property tax. It will be a toll on our budget because it is, like Mr. Grant said, it does not generate revenue, so it could lose $30,000 a year. But $375,000 minus $1.88 million still leaves $1.5 million. Not of, that's just the budget of our discretionary spending. That is extra money that's coming back into our budget that has never been there before. So you can still, well, we need to fix the streets, we need to do this, we need to do that. You got an extra $1.5 million to do it. I advise that you don't go buying a bunch of new vehicles and hiring a bunch of new people and giving a bunch of raises, and let's use the money for the next 3 to 5 years to fix our broken infrastructure, but we still have the ability to service this debt and get a pool today. We're at that point. The citizens of Littlefield have sacrificed for 20 years now. We've been very aggressive paying the prison off 9 years early. It's time to be rewarded for your efforts and to get some things that you need or want. With that, what if the prison leaves today? It left before the state cancels contracts all the time. Contracts aren't worth anything with the state of Texas. Last Monday, the state of Texas extended their contract with Management and Training Corporation. It was a 5-year lease with 2 5-year options. They extended their contract Monday to a 20-year contract. So this facility, this program, is going to be around in the state of Texas until 2039.
Nice.
Doesn't mean it will be here. They could move it. But the reason they asked for that extension was because they came to us last year, if you'll remember, and asked us to invest a lot of money into the facility, adding more space. And we said, we're not interested in that. If you want to do it, y'all can build it. Don't pay us rent on what you build space-wise. That's another conversation off the agenda item. The fact of the matter is, back to my point, if the prison leaves tomorrow, God forbid, they just pack up and leave tomorrow, how do we afford this pool that we're going to build or might build? Annual debt service, $375,000. Just take the rent out, $980,000. It leaves you with $900,000 from the city general fund of $650,000 and the $250,000 of LEDC-B money that also can be used for something. And so out of that 900,000, you still spend 375, you're still net a win. You've had more money to do stuff than you have in the last 2 decades. So that's the financing. Ms. Jennings' questions, admission fees, Mitch went over that last week. Whatever standard in cities, a couple bucks. Number of employees depends, can be, there'll probably be a manager and multiple employees. Water source, thanks to foresight from the mayor, can't remember his name, years ago, he bought 7,500 acres of water rights, got ran out of town for it, but Littlefield is one of the communities in the Panhandle that is the best situated for water. We own 7,500 acres of water rights in the Sandhills. It does take a 15-mile transmission line to get it here, but the last, when Arias Mendes was here, they did a study. We had a 100-year supply of water, and the reason it stopped at 100 was because that's as long as the study went. Concession stand, it could be a contractor, it could be the manager that runs that. The money, I'm sure, because the city, I'm sure, would buy the Cokes, would be the city's. It might be that we put it out for bid, and heck, Nautilus would run the concession stand. Who owns the land before we bought it for the swimming pool? That was covered years ago. That land was acquired from First United Methodist Church among 4 other options at that time. That was the one the council at the time chose was the best access, best centrally located, best visible from 84. Who profits from selling the lots? I don't see how that relates to this. Everybody profits from good things happening in town. Can people afford it? Can you afford an iPhone? I'm sure you can afford a couple bucks a day, and I tell you what, if there's a kid here that can't afford it, I'll pay their way. But that covered the vote by the citizens, guys. That's the reason I covered that some of why. I just don't think that's why. It delays the process. The whole deal all along with this has been finding ways to delay it. Community center's addressed. It's phase 2. If you have the appetite for it in several years as the citizens of Littlefield, come back to us. It's on the drawing board, and we'd love to see that project. But at this time, we've just done polling and public comments on the pool. I think it would be irresponsible to add the extra cost for the community center at this time. We covered the detention center that came up earlier. I want people to want to be transparent about this issue. We did have citizens comment, so if you do have a comment about financing, we do want, the whole entire council wants to fully address your concerns. This is not, please be respectful, this isn't the time to get up and tell us we're all idiots and how the police department this and dog catcher this is. If you have a question that we can help educate you and be transparent, please ask it, and I'll address that, or the council can address that at this time. Any questions? Very good. That's all I have.
Well, I think you pretty much summed it up, Mayor. Thank you very much.
It's a big deal. It's a lot of money. I think we all need to decide, I'm going to get on soapbox just a little longer. I get tired of, there's a lot of people that dedicate a lot and give a lot to this community. Volunteering, churches, volunteers, Lions Club, Rotary, first responders with all their volunteers. Hey, I don't do this because, I do enjoy it, but, we're trying to make the town great. And I believe everybody up here has this town's best thoughts in mind. There's a lot of big picture things that we deal with that, it doesn't make sense, this item at this time or something. You have to look and have some vision and try to tie all these together and make it good. Is Littlefield ever going to grow to the size of Hereford or Frisco? No, we're not. I think we'll be consistent over the next couple decades. We're close enough to Lubbock. We honestly, if we won't be stupid and we'll do some planning and have some vision, I think we can be the next shallow water. They're 10 years away from getting sucked up exponentially by the outer loop into Lubbock, and it's going to lose its luster just as Friendship did years ago. Littlefield, if we'll get it together and clean up our town and work together as a community to make things good, we're a logical spot right down the road from Lubbock. Little things like this make the community great. But man, I don't get on Facebook anymore. I used to, and it's full of hate and viciousness. And if you want to have a question, come to city council, see your councilman. Gosh, I'm an open book. The city manager
is willing to see you at any time of day to answer any questions, but there's so much just hate and bullshit on Facebook, so pardon me, write that down. Guys, if you have a question, come ask. We're not trying to hide anything. And so quit being so negative about this town. If you don't like it, man, there's a lot of places the grass is always greener, and I'm not saying every place doesn't have its problems, but gosh, it's only as good as you're gonna make it, and so quit complaining about everything. That's it.
Tara Wagner.
Any public comments over, but, oh, you have a question? No?
Yeah,
Okay.
Darla Jennings did have a concern about whether or not the employees that are hired are going to be certified. And if we're gonna have enough employees working to cover everything that you have shown on this pool, because, I mean, you're gonna have kids that are gonna be at the top of that slide, and you're gonna have kids that are gonna try and do 2 or 3 at a time. Are you gonna have somebody up there that's gonna maintain that? Are you gonna have more than one employee like Mitch Grant was talking about last week, that is going to be able to, or that's going to be taking money from the people coming in, doing concessions, and keeping an eye on the pool? When, I mean, he also said that there was gonna need to be at least 3, maybe 4 lifeguards at different sections of the pool. We just need to make sure that if we're going to have this, are we going to have people qualified to take care of this, or are we gonna have high school kids, juniors, seniors, that have never really had a job like this, watching our 5-year-olds to 10-year-olds, even if there's parents out there, are they gonna be able to take care of any issues that come up?
Very good.
That's my question.
Very good question, and I don't think anybody here would like to put any kids in jeopardy. I hope the parents will also take responsibility in keeping up with their kids and being there with young children. I've never ran a pool, so Mr. Grant, can you address her concerns on?
Yes, absolutely, all good questions, and there's kind of a leveling thing with that with your insurance company with Texas Municipal League. If you have a swimming pool, they provide a lot of resources to help us make sure we're covered and trained, and you're probably looking at 5 to 6 guards to run that thing usually. And these could be high school kids, they could be college kids, but they'll all be Red Cross certified, life-saving, that's a requirement, and they'll go through the training and stuff like that. And my experience has been in different pools that I've had, different towns, is you can usually fill those positions pretty good. If you try to run it in those 9 months that school's in session, you're not going to be able to find it. But summertime, yeah, you can usually find a lot of people, and you got to start early, and you got to find them, and you got to train them. But usually there's a lot of kids that love to work. Kids, I say college kids too, that like to work in the swimming pool, and usually there's not a big problem. Now, don't confuse what I said about the concession stand. All I was talking about is not having a person to take admission, sell groceries, and watch the pool. All I was saying is, instead of having 3 extra people, you got one that can do a little of all of it. But it doesn't mean you don't have to have a guard. Typically at the top of the slide, bottom of the slide, lazy river, then you'll have one kind of roaming around the deep end and watching the zero entry. So, I mean, you're looking at 3 or 4, maybe 5 guards that you're going to need there.
Part of that's with the cluster of your design, right, to try to improve efficiency.
Yeah, the challenge is the lazy river, because you need guards to be able to see the bottom of the pool all over, to see stuff. And I hope that answers your question. I've run quite a few pools, and got to make sure and not have a culture out there where you have shenanigans and stuff with high school kids and stuff that there's ways to address that, and a lot of it has to do with having a good pool manager. And one of the good things about this pool is it has a lot of attractions for little kids. And it's kind of a sideline, it doesn't have anything to do with anything, but when you have little kids out there, you have moms. And those moms make sure everything's done right because the kids are there. So kind of have a little extra push there to make sure that there's no silliness going on and stuff like that by having the moms out there with their little kids.
So Mitch, today's agenda item is this first part of the deal. It does move the ball further. There's lots of time that passes and different deals with the calendar you presented last week. But this is to kind of, this gets the ball going and puts out the notice that we do intend to bond out this money to build this facility. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. No questions or discussion?
I have one more question. Anthony Thomas, 511 East 11th Street. I understand the bonding and all that, whether, I'm not a mathematician or anything. Has there been any discussion of any smaller projects for the children, people of Littlefield, such as updating a park or adding to a park? I was discussing with a few workers today, a skate park, say, is often cheaper than aquatic center. Has there been any discussion about projects like that?
Yes, sir. Over the years, several of those items came up. It was brought up for some things which people need to understand is not in the purview of what a city does. For example, during one public hearing, the lady said, why don't we build a bowling alley? That's a great idea. Bowling alleys are fun, but cities don't own bowling alleys. I guess they could. We own a prison. But that's kind of out of the scope of what we would do. The skate parks and the parks, all of those are great. Our parks do need some money spent on them. One of the reasons, I'm not trying to make excuses, one of the reasons of the condition they're in right now is we are short on help with Public Works, and that poor department gets pulled from streets and fixing potholes to mowing parks to cleaning up an alley and doing all kinds of jobs that nobody else wants to do. We need more people. We need summer help from high school kids that we used to have in the budget and stripped it out several years ago. We need more of that. We do need to improve our parks. The park fund is intended for that, and that's what it was put into effect for, was to do things like that and make improvements. Several years ago, when the pool was a topic of discussion, the city council dedicated the money that received, because that was part of to be fair and honest, we said, look, if you donate to this, we're going to try to build a pool and take these donations specifically for the pool. That little thermometer that you've noticed hasn't moved much over the years. That's why that money that at one point a year ago it had, I think, $200,000 in it, or I don't know what the balance of it is. Andrew, do you?
Sure, right now, 223.
Right now, 225,000. So we need to probably use some of that. We've got to get, if we do this bond, that frees up that money. But at that time, it was kind of dedicated for the pool at that point. And it does there's lots of items that need to be addressed, and that decision, if we move forward after tonight, definitely needs to be reversed. That did help us pay for some engineering. We've done approximately 100 and how much engineering?
We've approved 141,000, we've paid out 20,000 so far on the engineering.
So part of the engineering, they got this big fancy beautiful set of drawings for big money. That part of that parks money, we made that decision back last December to use that parks money for engineering to help. You've got to understand, we're 6 months into the design phase of this pool construction, and this process starts. I can't give you a firm timeline at this point, but if this process moves forward, we're looking at opening the pool summer 2021. It may not be May 30th. But there's a lot of things and weather can happen. But we had the money to pay for the engineering. We felt that this would be a project at some point in the future we would try to do. And so we used that Parks Fund money to pay for some of the engineering, and there's a good, more than I thought there was in there now, that hopefully we can get back to fixing some stuff that needs addressed. Skate park's a great idea, some concrete, things like that. A race car, there's some ideas of the little RC car track thing. We have lots of space. We have plans. Engineers have already drawn it to dig a retention pond
on both Crescent Park and Laguna Park to try to help with the flooding issue and get that water more isolated in lower areas and stock it with catfish or bass or something that could be fun. But for multiple reasons, that would be a good idea. So yes, Mr. Thomas, there's been discussions, but with the decision of the council several years ago, it was dedicated for the pool at that time. And we still have our general parks budget, but it just doesn't allow for a lot of stuff. But there's a lot of things we could do that doesn't cost a lot of money that we need to address.
Thank you.
Eric, did you say that the Economic Development Corporation will free up that money? Or will they be still paying?
Andrew can fill in the...
Once the detention center's paid off?
Yeah, so years ago, before I was on council, I think you were on council. You were on council then. As LADCB, the attorney had wrote an opinion, and it was allowed and voted on and set up LADCB. I think prior to that, it was a street tax. That LADCB money was that portion goes to help service the debt payment of the prison. Once the prison's paid for, that money will then not have a use. It can do economic LADCB type activities. Those are tough to do. Other cities have struggles with LADCBs, but quality of life projects can be done with LADCB, is our understanding from attorney conversations with attorneys a year or two ago. And at no point was a tax increase. Utility rates are not paying for this. That needs to be understood. And it's not a tax rate. A tax rate of 75 point whatever cents, I anticipate will continue to be the tax rate.
Did you say then that the LEC would go ahead and pay part of this bond then? Is that what you're saying?
That would have to be a decision of that board itself. Who members on there later in the pack, we have to appoint some people to that. But yeah, I would hope that they would recognize this quality of life project as being a great opportunity to spend that. How much do they receive per year, Andrew? Around the A gets about $270 and the B gets about $270.
Yes, it's a portion of our sales tax, of course, that goes into that, and it can be roughly $250,000 to $300,000 somewhere in there, depending on how good of a sales tax year we have.
But we couldn't direct them to do that. That board itself would have to make that decision, which there's a lot of city members on that. That's how it's been for years, so I would expect it would pass.
Well then, since we got all that information, which was good information, I'll make a motion we consider to adopt a resolution to the City Council, Littlefield, Texas, directing publication of notice to issue a combination of tax and revenue certifications of obligation.
I will second that.
Thank you guys for your motion and your second. At this time, motion's been made by Michael, seconded by Kenny. Is there any further discussion? Being that this could be contested, please all in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, raise your right hand.
And I will say that I do not oppose the pool idea itself. I only oppose the fact that we are not letting the citizens vote for this amount of money.
Janine, will you please note that in the minutes?
It'll be in the recording.
The motion carries. Next, we will consider and approve the recommendation to the City Council for the future aquatic center design from the Parks Advisory Committee. Mitch?
In our discussions, I don't think the council ever actually officially approved the design of the swimming pool that was recommended by the Parks Board. You all have seen this before, but this is what was approved by the committee. Of course, there's the site plan up there that shows the general layout of the pool, and not a lot of decisions to make at this point going forward. There will be some later on that will be brought to you as a decision as we go along in construction. But like I say, the layout there, I mean, everybody's looked at it and familiar with it. The Parks Committee recommended a sports team and 2 play items in the zero entry. That's the first 2 pages, the little sports and the kickoff football slide for the little kids. The coping color, they talked about, they approved the tan color, which is just kind of an off-white, not too dark. The coping style is a safety, kind of have a choice of a squared off one or a rounded, typical swimming pool safety curved edge like you see on page 7 there. And then the tile, they picked a light blue tile around the edge underneath the coping of the light blue so it wouldn't show staining as bad, the water staining. And that's really kind of about the extent of what was approved at the Parks Committee.
I'm assuming they approved the frost-proof
What?
cap tile? They approved the frost-proof cap tile?
Well, the tile of that page shows the tile, cap
Okay,
tile.
Never mind, it's the color,
Yeah.
never mind.
Yes,
I
sir.
didn't realize there was just that color on that one.
The hand, the safety rounded thing was either that or the squared, and was, typically you hit your head on the squared thing, you can gash it open a little bigger than the rounded one, this experience.
So we'll move forward with this design during the bid out process when this goes out to request for proposals as RFP. Then I guess more will be decided at that time, but this is taking this initial plan that we've been talking about for.
Yeah, the final plans will be ready at the end of the month, and they're preparing those at this point, and that will be finished pretty soon.
No other questions? We get a motion to approve the Park Advisory Committee's recommendation on pool design.
Make a motion, we approve the, what you said. The future aquatic center design from the Parks Advisory Committee.
I'll second that motion.
Motion's been made by Kenny, seconded by Buddy. Is there any further discussion? If none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Next, we will consider and approve amending an engineering contract for design of pool house. Mitch?
Here's I just got this engineering proposal. It's not a contract amendment, but it's a proposal to amend the contract. What I asked, if y'all are okay with that number, then we'll have the attorney review the contract, and it would be similar to the one that was approved early on. And I kind of apologize, we may get into the weeds a little bit on this thing, but basically, we've been paying for our engineering out of the parks fund, and we've paid out $20,000 so far on a $141,000 pool design contract, and at this point we've got $233,691 in the current fund for parks and for the swimming pool. This proposal is to do the bathhouse and a covered pavilion for $80,000 additional engineering. Standalone, I think that's kind of high, but when you add the two numbers together, you're going to be way below 10% for engineering for the entire project. So if the engineering comes up $221,000, let me empty this sheet out. If the engineering comes up a total of $222,000, that's gonna be way below any of our original estimates for the pool, cost. So I would recommend you approve this contract.
Wait, is this just engineering for the
Just-
bathhouse?
Just the engineering, and it seems kind of high, but on the other hand, if you add the two numbers together, you come up to 221,500, which is way below the 10% for what engineers typically get for design, a big project.
Does it have to be engineered?
Yeah.
Can we not get somebody who actually does this type of work normally? Just to
Got it.
say, hey, we've got a great plan, we can get it put together and
I'd love to live, but it's got to be engineered, there's no way around it. The law requires it.
Part of the first estimate is they beat down the pool part of the engineering, even though it's an exorbitant amount, it's cheaper than, what is engineering contracts usually? They usually quote you 10 to 11% of the
Usually
cost.
12 to 13%.
Of the total cost for engineering, and so we beat them down hard on the first one. And part of it was we were applying for grants and they worked with us to get that done. Part of this 80,000 is they're making up a little bit of what they underdid on the last one. It still is way below what the normal engineering deal is for it, but to ensure that we can build a safe and lasting pool house. I don't see a lot of options, do you, Mitch?
No, but I would like to kind of go through these numbers a little bit. On the front, I gave you kind of a spreadsheet, and let me kind of explain how this works. We've got an original estimate, which of 3.9 million, which I kind of felt like was certainly on the high side. And so we looked at that earlier before this meeting, and we were able to reduce that partially by taking the engineering out, but partially by taking out some of the things that I felt were probably overstated. But they gave me an estimate of 1.1 million for the pool house, which after I passed out and woke up and got some smelly sauce and stuff like that, I got looking at the numbers, and I think they were kind of assuming a lot bigger building than what we were talking about, a 3,100 square foot bathhouse and pavilion. I'm not too worried about that, even if we did the 4.4 million bigger bathhouse and pavilion. I think we'd still come way in under 4 million for the whole project. But as an option, I had them figure up that far right column of $670,000 for the pool house, which I still think is way high. But that would be for a 2,000 square foot pool house, which would also allow a 20 by 20 area for storage, and could even air condition it for small party gatherings or something like that. Plus a smaller shaded area to the side of it. So, you got a choice. We can have these engineers design this thing for the bigger area in the bathhouse number 1 column, or we can cut it back to a little smaller building on that far right column for just right at 4 million.
Mitch, with what you said with your previous experience in building a pool several years ago, you think that the engineering estimates are high on this, which I would agree with, but
Yeah.
can you have them bid in the bigger pool house and then we go out for RFPs for contractors, get requests for contractors and see if the numbers come in like you anticipate that are cheaper than? And then if it's not that, can we either through additive alternate or rebidding if we have to look at a smaller option for a pool house?
Well, that's one of the things I hope we put in place when we bid this thing out, is we want to have a lot of deductive alternates or additive alternates to to be able to pick and choose exactly what we want and knowing the price. Right now, we don't know the price of any of this stuff, so.
Other than engineering.
Yeah, other than engineering, and they're always good about telling you what that's gonna
Are
be.
you talking about alternates within the plans, so they might be able to?
Alternates,
say, use
yeah,
different
yeah, within the
materials or
plan.
different
Yeah.
options?
Yeah,
Instead of
alternates.
using the gold ones that it sounded like they put in here, or platinum in
Yeah,
it, go
yeah.
down.
Yeah, we'll go with gold instead of platinum. Anyway, there is ways to reduce this cost, and, you know, it's part of what we will put on the engineering, is to give us some options of picking and choosing going forward, where we can, you know, have a list of alternates down here where you can say, well, you know, we don't think we can afford this after all, you know, we'll cut this out, or we'll add this, depending on whether you do it as an additive or reductive. But anyway, today, all I'm asking is we approve this contract for the bathhouse, to get started on design on that, so that doesn't lag behind the project. And all this is paid from the, the council elected to pay that from the park fee. And so far, we paid out $20,000 of the $141,000 original contract with the pool. And so you'll have probably a good, probably a good $40,000 or $50,000 left in that, $40,000 or $50,000 left in that park fund after the engineering costs, and if donations stay constant like they always have been.
If there's no other questions, can we get a motion to approve the amended engineering contract for the design of the pool house?
I make a motion we accept the amended engineering contract for the design of the pool house.
I'll second.
Motion's been made by Michael, seconded by Kenny, that we approve the amended engineering contract. Is there any further discussion? And I would just like to say at this time, I appreciate the council, Mr. Warren, for your in-depth look at it. I respect that. I respect all of y'all's input, respect the citizens coming tonight. Thank you for coming. This is a big thing. Thank you for your questions. There will be more questions coming up in the future, and this is how civil government is supposed to work with the crowd and the public and discourse among its members. And I really believe that everybody looked at all of these issues we've covered here tonight in depth and hopefully making the best decision for the city. So if there's no other discussion.
One note. On the first page of this covered letter to Mr. Grant, it says that the architecture firm says that they are concerned that this project cannot be constructed by opening day in 2021.
Yeah, they got some concerns, but, you know, I mean,
They're looking at it May 3rd.
yeah, they're,
Did they?
I'm gonna whoop them and spur them, so they'll get something. I mean, that's just part of the deal.
So what is opening day?
Well, hopefully we would have it open at the first of the summer, but, you know, the longer we mess around here, I mean, if we don't go
Well, yeah,
forward.
they have a
push it
projected
further.
date, what's the date?
Hopefully in June sometime, but
It's pretty early.
it's gonna be, I mean, it's gonna be a battle to get it done that quick.
Would you?
Because
This
the
time
bond
next
won't
year?
come, well, part of the decision y'all made earlier, when we first started the engineering, was to get a lot of the engineering out of the way. Because if you wait for engineering plus the construction, you're looking at a year. But in this case, I mean, 9 months is pushing it to build a pool. There's contractors out there that can do this really fast, and I know from experience, I know when we built in Vernon, took quite a while, but there was a lot of things that could have gone faster, just looking back on it. If you get the right contractor, you can ride them very hard and get them to get it done quicker.
So what does the engineering company think our opening day is? Because they're saying they're concerned that it won't make it, so apparently they have a day in mind.
Last email I saw or something, it was May 20th, they were talking about opening the summer and school out was the last day that they're concerned about, talking about June the 1st being open. And just, it's like Mitch said, it's going to be, things are going to have to click, and we can't have a snowstorm for a month in December.
Well, I think Parkville, a lot of times, are very cautious about time too. It's kind of like with their estimates, they estimate longer periods sometimes. So you can kind of feed them up a little bit and make them go a little quicker.
The reality is this is, until we have the prison paid off, I mean, we try to move this along as timing-wise, is to keep it all in motion, and hopefully things will come together and we can be open the first day of June. I don't think anybody can predict that at this point in this stage of the process, but that's the goal.
And like I said, my memo was, it's a very aggressive schedule. And if we went back and did the design build thing, that really would have slowed it down quite a bit. Doing it this way should make it faster than if we try to separate it out and do it separate.
Motion on the table by Michael, seconded by Kenny. Is there any further discussion before I take a vote? If none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll consider and approve tax deeds for trust properties in the city of Littlefield, Texas from Texas Community Groups. First one is property ID 20303 at 715 Phelps Avenue and 20153 at 801 West 7th Street. The deeds are in your packet, has the same clawback provisions and everything as all of them have. Mitch, you have found all of these bidders to be in good standing with the city of Littlefield.
Yes.
So if there are any questions or issues with that, we get a motion to approve.
Make a motion to approve those tax deeds.
I'll second that motion.
Motion's been made by Ben, seconded by Buddy. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? The motion carries. Next, we will consider and approve appointment of LEDCA directors, 2 of them, and a reappointment of 1 director for a 5-year term. That is on page 101 of your packet. Joel Griffith has only served 1 term and is seeking a reappointment. And we have Pat Dangle is expiring, and who's the other man that Joe Embry that resigned. So we have 2.
Joe Embry.
Joe Embry resigned, and so we have Joe's position and Pat's position to fill, and Joel's reappointment if y'all so choose.
Well, I'll make a motion that we go ahead and appoint Brian Gregory to take Pat Daniel's place and Graham Henley to take Joel's place and reappoint Joel Griffith for another term.
Who is the second?
Graham Henley.
Works at Capital One.
And they show interest.
Justin, you talk to them.
Yes, they're more than excited to join, and they're great community members already, so it'd be great to have their voice on our board.
I'll second those appointments. Or nominations, I guess. I'll second those nominations.
Nominations have been made by Kenny, seconded by Ben. If there are no further nominations, consider that a motion to appoint those. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? The motion carries. Next, we will consider and approve a reappointment of 1 director for LEDCD for a 2-year term, and that is on page 103. Andrew Eisenman is up for reappointment.
Make a motion to reappoint Andrew Asselborn, if he's still willing. Okay.
Check. Motion's been made by Ben, seconded by Michael. Is there any further discussion or nominations? If none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, the motion carries. Next, we will consider and approve the reappointment of 2 directors of the Board of Adjustment for a 2-year term. That is on page 105. We have Lori Zinn seeking a reappointment and Gary Yazel seeking a reappointment. If there are no other nominations for a motion to reappoint those.
I make the motion, we approve the reappointment, those two reappointments, those two reappointments.
I'll second.
Motion's been made by Michael, seconded by Kenny, that we reappoint Lori Zinn and Gary Yeazel to the Board of Adjustment. If there are no further nominations, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carries. Next, we'll consider and approve expenditures for equipment covered by COVID-19 funding. Mitch?
I've got Monica here that can fill us in on all the information. But I want to make sure you know, and I don't know how this memo got back in there, but we looked at a possibility of building a new Type 1 cell. We're going to need a new Type 1 cell before too long, and we looked at the possibility of using COVID money for that. I think the term is called quarantine, and we're getting hit with that really hard. People are at home and they're cleaning up their yards, which is great, or replacing mattresses and just everything in the world. But after talking to somebody on the state solid waste committee, that's not possible. COVID money cannot be used for that one sale. Good idea, but just lack of heart. Monica's here. She can kind of explain this stuff with a lot better accuracy than I can. I do good just to be able to pronounce some things.
Well, I'm not so sure about that, but we are here today from an EMS perspective, seeking opportunity from you guys to spend some of the Corona Relief Fund that has been sent our city's way. I know most of you know that the city has had opportunity to get a little over $300,000 in Corona Relief Fund. I believe 20% of this we've already gotten, but the remaining 80% is available to us on a reimbursement issue. 75% of these funds must be spent on medical expenses, public health expenses, and payroll expenses. So what we're asking for certainly falls within the realms of this fund. We are looking at basically adding some equipment. We have put in service a reserve ambulance dedicated as a COVID response ambulance. Adding this equipment will not only add to our cache of equipment for future, even when and if the coronavirus goes away, and that truck's decommissioned, we will still have all of this equipment available to us. In order to upgrade from the BLS truck, which is what it is licensed at the state level, up into the MICU truck, which is what we're running all of our ambulances at. The addition of this equipment that we're asking for will do that, as well as replacing antiquated equipment that we have that's over 20 years old. Because of patient care protocol changes directly related to COVID, that makes requesting this equipment under this program acceptable. We have contacted other EMS services to make sure we're within the realm of what all EMS services are asking for. We have contacted vendors to make sure that these are indeed approved expenditures for equipment. What we're asking you guys to consider is the addition of a cardiac monitor defibrillator, a CPR device, stretcher with power lift, and which we've got prices on. Those items are right at $95,900. We're also asking you to consider letting us add some transport ventilators, which are within the realms of these funds as well. We have not at this time got prices on those because we're still doing some research to see which is going to be the best units, not only for operations as well as what it's going to cost per unit on patient care.
Approximate care of those approximate cost of those 3 ventilators?
Actually, it's 5 ventilators as opposed to the 3 that we had. Ventilators, you can spend anywhere from a couple of $1,000s up to $20,000 a piece. The ones we're looking at will probably be in the $4,000 to $5,000 range, which make them easy for us to operate and do not cost a lot to maintain and, per patient use.
So you're asking for 95,000 of the COVID money plus an additional, if we granted you 30,000, you would be more than
Yes,
able
that would definitely fall within.
Mitch, is this going to allow anybody, other departments will still have $200,000 to spend, more than that to spend?
Yes, they've already given us I think we have that in the count already, 65,000.
Yeah, they sent they sent like a small
Which is
portion of it
20%.
first.
Yeah, they'll eat that up and then, I hate to, it's what it's intended for. It's for health issue, for handling, and EMS is right in front of that.
This will give us a good opportunity to get much needed equipment on federal.
On the federal dollars,
Yep.
yes.
And there's no match.
There's no match.
This is reimbursement
Yes.
after the 65, it's reimbursement.
And certainly don't want to leave money sitting in the pot, because it will go away. These expenditures have to be made by the end of December, or they will go away.
So if I'm reading this correctly, we got to spend 75% of the 325,000 on medical? Could be
I think
around
that's right, yeah.
Yes, sir.
And you're only at 100-some thousand?
Well, 75% of the 300,000 has to go to medical expenses, public health expenses, or payroll expenses directly related to COVID-19. So, yes. And we may possibly be coming back and asking you for more money, just so we don't leave money in the pot. Certainly, I want to make sure other departments have opportunity to see if any of any items that they have can fall into these categories as well.
With Buddy's question though, I mean, this would be this is not repayable, this is a grant.
Grant.
Basically, but if we don't spend it correctly, like if we don't spend 75% on medical stuff, then do we have to pay back what we don't use correctly? If we're gonna get 323,000, right?
No, we don't, we get 65,000, but there's earmarked 325,000 for our use.
Okay.
So this is like 90,000, which we'll use up all at 65,000. Plus, we will buy the items and request reimbursement of about
That will reimburse
30,000 to 40,000
for that.
That part's not
Yes.
for that. And all of this falls within that requirement of 75,000. This is all,
75%.
yeah, 75% of it.
I just make sure that part of that was not in our package.
Okay.
Well, as you recall, the last meeting, we looked at this and asked that we have a committee there, me, I think MJ and Andrew.
Yes.
And any of the items that were over 10,000, we would come to the council for approval, but the items that were, 2,000 or 3,000 or something like that, or 5,000, well, that committee can approve those. But, I mean, the thing is, all of these are non-budgeted items. You can't really use COVID money to pay for a budgeted item.
True.
It's a line item, you can forget it, you're not gonna pay for it. So that brings in the issue of budget amendments. So we're gonna have to end up doing a budget amendment to handle these things when we get
As long as Uncle Sam's paying for it, sounds like a good idea, so thank you for all your work. Any other discussion? If not, can we get a motion to approve those expenditures? And we probably need to put it's 30,000 reasonable for your ventilator.
Yes, sir.
The 95 Rockport.
Most definitely should fall within that range.
Your motion might be to put some constraints on that. so we don't end up with $20,000 ones.
I can assure you we will not.
I make a motion, we approve these expenditures for the equipment covered by COVID-19 funds.
And improve their ventilators at
And, what was it, 20?
30, we'll give them some.
30. Approve the ventilators, spending of 30.
Motion's been made by Michael, is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Motion's been made by Michael, seconded by Buddy, is there any further discussion? If none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. All opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll consider and approve an electric easement for Lane County Electric Cooperative to serve new MTC buildings at the Texas Civil Commitment Center, Bill Clayton facility. Mitch?
Kind of a last minute item, right to me just before we deadline on the agenda is this easement for Lane County Electric. The attorney has reviewed this and had a couple of small changes. We had them changed easement to just an underground easement. I made a little map here of the facility out there. You recall a while back, the council approved some industrialized work-side mobile homes to go out there to handle patients that are in the later stages of the counseling. It's like stage 4.
Tier 4.
Yeah, tier 4. And this easement comes from the east property line there underground to the kind of the midpoint between the location for those manufactured homes, basically. And 35-foot easement underground. I don't see any other way to do this other than to allow easement across there for access and electrical these 3 buildings.
And it's for those 3, for the,
Yeah, they'll set that ground mounted transformer pad right kind of in the middle of the street.
And they're busting that seams and made this to go.
Yeah, they're 372.
So that's what they lack now, with getting people in there, just electricity in, or?
Yeah, they got the buildings there. They're fitting them with fire sprinklers, and they need to run the power over there to get them going. They're in full court press mode right now, trying to get this thing going so they can put people in there.
No further questions, can we get a motion approving this easement?
Well, 1 second. On the covenant of access, or the right-of-way easement, it does say here that the height of the easement shall be from, and this is the 3rd paragraph, the height of the easement shall be from 15 feet beneath the surface of the ground to a height of 50 feet above the ground.
Yeah, that's a good, I should have pointed that out, that easement is for their equipment to go in there. It's not to do any kind of aerial overhead lines of any kind. And it kind of covers us because it says underground up there above it. So the 50 foot, it started out actually 70, and I asked them why they had to have that. And they said, well, that's to put the line in. And so I understand that.
And legal review this.
Yeah.
so it's for equipment.
Yeah, to get for the installation, they're less. The actual equipment only be about 4 foot tall, but, and a pad mounted transformer, but, and then actually I should have pointed out too, 35-foot easement's kind of wide, but actually they plan to come in at an angle, so they need a little wider easement.
Okay, it's got to be done. I'll make a motion to approve the easement.
I second.
Motion's been made by Ben, seconded by Michael, that we approve the easement. Is there any further discussion? If none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you.